Own the Road with Kelly and Bob is brought to you by Mueller Metal Roofs and Buildings. Made in America, made to last. Coming up on this episode,
I've got this idea to start an entity called the Chet Atkins Appreciation Society, not as a fan club, but as a group of people who know the music.
Hi, we're Kelly
and Bob Phillips, and we're on the perpetual road trip of America's back roads,
where the journey is always the destination.
Hello, and thanks for joining us for this episode of Own the Road with Kelly and Bob. I'm Bob Phillips.
And I'm Kelly Phillips. You've probably heard us say it a million times, but the best part of this job, if it really is a job, is the people we get to meet.
Every day as we travel around the country, you and I get to meet incredible people doing incredible things. Things that often make our world a better, or at least more interesting place.
So that brings us to this week's story. It takes place in Nashville, Tennessee. But it's something that has a following from all over the country, really all over the world. And it all started with a music legend named Chet Atkins.
Tell me who you are and where you're from.
I'm Big Jim Allen from Clearwater, Florida, part of the Tampa Bay Fingerstyle Guitar Guild and a proud member of CAAS.
Why are you here at the CAAS convention?
I started coming here when I was young, and now I'm old, and I'm still here.
I'm Nathan Gabriel Miller, and I'm from Summerville, South Carolina.
So why are you here at the Chet Atkins Appreciation Society convention?
My dad and I, we're both lovers of Chet Atkins, and we also like Tommy Emmanuel and Doyle Dykes, some of these fingerstyle guitarists.
Can you give us a little sample of your ukulele playing real quick?
Oh, sure.
For every person in attendance at this year's convention of the Chet Atkins Appreciation Society, there is a story. Similar, but each with a different twist. Yet one commonality. Everyone here worships a style of guitar playing not invented by, but made popular by, a man named Chet Atkins.
Yeah, in fact, Chet himself told the story that he was first inspired by a man named Merle Travis, as Merle was inspired by the mostly nameless musicians that came out of the hills and hollers of eastern Kentucky and Tennessee.
And it's not just guitars they play. Even Chet himself also played the mandolin, fiddle, banjo, and ukulele. It has many labels, and it seems everyone plays a slightly different version. But the most popular name for this style of guitar playing is thumb picking, a moniker taken from the fact that those who do it play a bass note on the guitar using their thumb, while employing anywhere from 1 to 4 fingers to play the rhythm and melody of a tune, creating a sound that mimics that of several instruments.
Yeah, it sure does, and it's difficult to master, mesmerizing to watch, and nothing short of enchanting to listen to. And that sound and style of music is the reason why these several hundred people are gathered this week all over the Sheraton Music City Hotel in Nashville.
This is my peer group. It's a bunch of seasoned veterans that have a credit card and a guitar, and we all show up and hang out once a year.
What is it about this music that attracted you?
I learn something new every year. I tell everyone that this is the check your ego at the door convention. Everyone here is great. You got national treasures like Guy Van Duzer. I've listened for 40 years. I had lunch with him. Same with John Knowles. And it's like, hanging out with Mount Rushmore, only they talk back.
I grew up in Atlanta, and my dad was from South Carolina, and he listened to the radio as a young man. So he heard WSM, and he heard Cincinnati, and he heard Chet, and he heard Merle Travis on the radio when he was playing with the Wildcats. He was enthralled with Merle and Chet from the 40s, probably 40s and 50s. And then when I was a teenager, he woke me up one night and said, "Come down quick, Chet Atkins is on the television."
Mark Pritchard was just a kid when he saw Chet Atkins on TV in the mid-'60s. He was so impressed that he set out to learn to play guitar and banjo in the image of Chet and other fingerstyle masters.
He was here in 1985 for that very first gathering of the Chet Atkins Appreciation Society, when about 75 people or so came together to honor their guitar heroes and to learn more about this style of music.
We have classes, seminars, performances, and in the last few years we've had the young thumbs who are kids who somehow found out about these guys and their music. Merle, Chet, finger pickers. The young thumbs are anywhere from 12 to 21.
There's a venue just south of Richmond in Mount Vernon, Kentucky, Renfro Valley. I think it's been around longer than the Grand Ole Opry. They actually had one of the first country radio barn dance. Music started, and I was standing up on my dad's knees on his lap, and I guess so enthralled with what was happening on the stage. Yeah, they knew something was up then. It wasn't until I was about 4 years old that I actually started asking for a guitar. That's the thing, I don't know what it is, I've always wanted to play the guitar.
It was only a few years ago that 25-year-old Parker Hastings was one of those young thumbs, the kids who treasured the style of Chet and Merle and all the other masters. But today, he is a bona fide thumb-picking wonder himself, with his own hits and concert tours.
I've traveled coast to coast. I'm under the attitude the sky truly is the limit. I tell people I'm truly just getting started, because it's been a lot of fun up to this point, but I want to keep it moving. Like I said, the sky is the limit, and I'm just along for the ride.
Why did you want a picture of yourself with John Knowles?
Because it's so many years that I wanted to come here to know all these wonderful guitar players, and meeting them personally is something so exciting.
You know who he is?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Where are you from?
Italy. It's a dream I had for a long time, and now it's becoming a reality. I'm so excited.
Tommaso Doglia traveled more than 5,000 miles to get his picture with guitar legend John Knowles and hear the other thumb pickers here at this gathering of guitar gods.
And even though it's the young thumbs that will likely save this precious piece of Americana music, it's the old masters like Texan John Knowles, who some consider to have been Chet's right-hand man and equally talented to the great guy himself, that people line up to see and hear.
And there was a new guitar store in Dallas called Frets and Strings, and that's what I taught there. One of my students wanted to meet Chet Atkins, and he was coming to play with the Dallas Symphony. So I went backstage. In that shop also was the guy who repaired all the violins for the orchestra. He told me when the rehearsal was. He said, "Go to the rehearsal, forget the show." In the rehearsal, they're always sitting around. And sure enough, Chet was sitting there, and I went up and introduced myself. And after we were kind of talking a little bit, and he was warming up, and he said, "Wait a minute, what did you say your name was?" I said, "John Knowles." And later I found out Chet always had his ear to the ground for somebody who might do something interesting. He wanted to meet everybody. "So what are you working on these days?" Hands me his guitar.
Wait, Chet Atkins hands you his guitar.
He said, "Show me what you're working on."
John Knowles would go from that chance meeting backstage at Dallas to arranging songs for Chet Atkins, writing a book about Chet's life and his music, and even winning a Grammy with him.
But it was Chet Atkins' gentle nudge for John Knowles to join him in the changing world of guitar music that truly cemented the respect and friendship between the two giants.
Well, within a short time I said, "So Chet, what would happen if I moved to Nashville?" What he said was, "Well, what are you doing in Dallas?" I said, "Well, I'm teaching and maybe play for a wedding, receptions, things like that." He said, "Yeah, we do all that in Nashville. Not come to Nashville, I'll make you a star." In other words, Nashville can be an ordinary town just like Dallas is. He didn't encourage me to do it. He didn't say, "Come to Nashville, I'll make you a star." He was like that, you know.
Okay, so the convention of the Chet Atkins Appreciation Society went on for about 4 days, and so did our conversations with all these music marvels. So there's a lot more to listen to.
Let's start with the story behind John Knowles' love of thumb picking.
I was born in Waco, and I was born 1 month after Pearl Harbor. So all my uncles were in the service. I didn't meet them until I was 4 or 5. But my grandfather was writing them letters. We still have those. He wrote in verse, here on the home front, da-da-da-da. You know, so my son is well, 4 generations later, is a songwriter. There has been verse and wordplay in our family for 4 generations. So even if I write a song today, I'm thinking about the title. Well, the other day, Becky and I pulled into our condo, and there was some turkeys in the parking lot. So I wrote down turkeys in the parking lot. Just, you know, and then I changed it to turkeys in the car park, right? And then I realized 2 toms, 3 hens. Turkeys in the parking lot. What do I see? A couple of toms and a hen or 3. I don't know what that is, but it's just a little words, rhythm, image. I was riding my bicycle and went to a pharmacy and saw a ukulele, a plastic ukulele on the hook, right there where the comic books were. And it was $3.95, unless you wanted to pay $4.95 and to get the buttons to make the chords. I thought, you know, number one, I don't want to spend $1, and number 2, I don't want to be relying on buttons. So the ukulele is really it. And I did that for a couple of years. I was playing along with the radio, which would have been Arthur Godfrey, but also Les Paul. And then I heard Chet, and I thought, I think I need those other 2 strings.
Do you remember the first time you heard Chet?
Yeah, oh yeah. I bought the record because I liked the album cover. It was a fingerstyle guitar, and it's the one with the orange Gretsch on the front. And you read over the liner notes, and it says, you won't believe this is just one guy. So the way that it looked, and I came home with that LP and realized our turntable didn't play those. So I went to a neighbor's house and listened to that record, and listened to that record. And finally my neighbor said, don't you think your folks are wondering where you are?
Time for you to go home.
And I'm still in touch with the kid who lived across the street.
But you were mesmerized by that music.
It absolutely captivated me. And the first thing I thought, this is impossible. And then I thought, well, it couldn't be impossible because he's doing it.
But it still seems
it's gotta be
impossible to
different.
us.
See, for me, the transition from impossible to really difficult was very important. Really difficult means you just got to work your butt off. Impossible means give it up. So what I would do is I found the one track on that album that had the fewest fancy chords, and it was Glowworm. And I would play just the bass note. And now I was playing duets with Chet Atkins.
Were you playing the bass note just with your thumb?
No, with a bare thumb. I didn't know about thumb picks then, yeah.
Now, did you go to school for music?
I tried. And they wouldn't let me major in music because I played the guitar. Because it hadn't happened yet. There was no guitar teachers. The guitar was not a real instrument.
So John Knowles went on to learn the guitar, but had a day job at Texas Instruments in Dallas after getting a degree in physics.
Then came that day when he finally met Chet Atkins, and he asked John what he was working on. So John told him and showed him.
I'd seen that motion picture of the Sting, and I was working on the Entertainer. So that last little bit, da-da-da-da-da-da-da-dum-bum-bum, and I showed him that much. And he said, yeah, he said, I've been working on that, but I wasn't doing that. He said, why don't you finish that up and send it to me? So 10 minutes in, I went from, wanting to meet him, to playing for him, to having an assignment.
You're going to arrange the Entertainer for Chet.
For Chet.
Yeah. So a little later, I called him up, and I said, do you want me to write the music out so you can learn that? He said, no, I've recorded that, but what else you got? And that's when I found out how quickly, I had just kind of roughed through it on a cassette. I didn't really perform it. I said, it's like this and this and this. So he just recorded it. He said, I want to do a whole album of movie themes. Oh, and call the guys at Guitar Player magazine. They wanted me to write a book, and I think you can do it. So I had a book to write, an album to finish, and I'm still teaching at the music store. I'm staying up late, and then I'm over at a friend's house 6 months later, I guess, and we're watching TV in the background while we're playing, I don't know, Monopoly or something, and the Grammys are on. And we're watching the scroll while before the show, these Grammys were awarded. Chet Atkins, the Entertainer. I didn't even know it was nominated.
Tell us about the relationship, that relationship with Chet Atkins. Got started there, but lasted how long and went where?
Well, until his death. I guess about maybe a couple of weeks before he died. I went by and he was in bad health. And he asked me to play a song he wrote, Happy Again. He said, play Happy Again. I like the way you play that. So I played happy again. And he looked up and he said, "How'd you get my fingernails?" He always thought he liked my fingernails. His were real thin, and mine are like horseshoes, you know.
You've got picks on the end of your fingers.
It feels like it, yeah. And so, but that's the thing, he teased me about my nails again. And that's the last time I saw him, you know.
What did Chet Atkins leave for the world, especially the world of music?
Well, I think he left all of us and more who are now operating in a different way than we would have. Singers, you know, songwriters, record producers, and also a way of working. The way Nashville still works, it's got everything to do with collaboration and partnerships and teams. If you're going to make a record, somebody who's the producer, first job is who should play piano, let's go look for some songs, who's writing some songs, and pull that team together, chosen for sounding good with that artist. One of my favorite stories I heard him tell was Jim Reeves was on RCA and had a couple of hits. Bimbo, Bimbo, where you gonna go? Yeah, was one of them. But he was singing up high, and Chet thought, he's got a better voice if it's lower. So he had him record, "Put your sweet lips, get closer to the mic." I mean, what is that? Is that spotting the talent, coming up with a solution, hiring the musicians, and that one change from that.
And it was a hit instantly.
Giant hit, you know. And he did Eddie Arnold early on. He remembers Dolly Parton coming to town, and she was, I don't know, a young teenager. Mm-hmm. And Chet says, go finish school, come back.
And she did.
And she did. And so I think you meet everybody. So I met Dolly in Chet's office, and after she left, he said, you know, there's two people in this town that everybody is underestimating. One of them is Dolly. She had not made a movie at that point.
Do we know who the other one was?
Jerry Reed.
Ah.
He said everybody, they hear him. As a matter of fact, he said they got Jerry off of his label and onto RCA and said, now be more like yourself. Everybody else was kind of telling him to be a rockabilly guy.
Yeah.
Well, Jerry was so original. Again, original, both of them, you know. So, and that's just the tone for the town.
Yeah.
So now everybody's working together, the cooperation. It looks really different on Music Row now.
What does your friendship association with Chet mean to you?
For one thing, I like to realize that my early hero was that approachable. And I learned to kind of respect what he did, but not make over it. And I think he enjoyed being around me because I could just work with him and have respect for him. Matter of fact, later on, I finally asked him to sign some of the albums we'd done together. I did, and I have very few pictures of us together. I didn't want to be a fan. We were all in it together. It is amazing when I think about it.
Another musician we got to spend time with was Bryce Mullins, who has a great story of his own.
Yeah, he does. And we got to hear one of his concerts at the convention. Let's listen into that.
So my name's Bryce Mullins. I have a brand new album out there, and it's called Breakthrough. Super excited to have that out, and it's actually featuring a re-release of two of my songs with string quartet, as arranged by the Endless Strings, and they'll be joining me in a little bit. So I also have a few new covers out, and I have one in my pocket that I'm going to be putting out in a month or so. I thought I needed to current things up, so I tried my hand at a Dua Lipa arrangement, so I hope you enjoy, and I'm going to be having a little stomp pedal.
Indiana, southeastern Indiana, kind of near Cincinnati. We're about halfway in between Cincinnati and Indianapolis, just a little town. And now I live in Oldenburg, which is an even smaller town. Now I went from the big city of 8,000 people in Batesville to the town of 600, Oldenburg.
Big city.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So, and we're kind of, Batesville's known for its hospital beds and casket company, and so if you're sick or dying, we got it.
We got you covered.
We got you covered. So I grew up in church playing in the worship band, and then my dad just taught me the basic couple chords. I got my first guitar when I was 11. I wanted to play drums, but my mom didn't want drums in the house, and so I got a guitar instead. So I started on guitar about 11, and my dad showed me the chords and just kind of how to strum along with songs and play, and we played together a lot. And I kind of just did it as a hobby. I played saxophone in the school band. My parents scraped together a couple pennies that we had, and we signed up for some lessons. I was a junior, probably a junior in high school, really, and so went in and had some lessons, really started to get into it, and had a great professor, and I did that for about a year and a half, and then I got accepted to the University of Cincinnati for classical guitar. So then I was off to the races. So CCM is like top 10 music school in the United States. It's like up there with Juilliard and Berkeley and IU and Jacob School of Music is. So then I was just kind of on the classical guitar journey. I wasn't really writing any of my own music, a little bit. Somewhere in there I heard about Tommy Emmanuel as well, and that lit another little fire, which I was keeping kind of in the back burner because I was really wanting to focus on my classical guitar while I'm there. I'm paying all this money. I don't want to be sneaking around playing fingerstyle music on the side. I just really want to focus on it. But I was really obsessed with Tommy. Like, seeing Tommy Emmanuel play was like, man, now that I really like.
Most people believe this style of music began in eastern Kentucky and probably eastern Tennessee.
25-year-old Parker Hastings, who we heard from earlier in this story, is very important to what's happening in the thumb-picking world because, well, one, he grew up in Kentucky, and two, he is one of the young musicians the old order is hoping will keep this music alive.
I was raised in Kentucky. I was born in Indianapolis. Both my parents are Purdue grads. We lived in Kentucky for about 4 months after I was born, before my mom's job relocated us to central Kentucky. We moved to Richmond, and that's where I grew up and went to the same school from preschool till I graduated high school. Neither one of my parents are necessarily musicians, but we've had a musical household ever since I can remember. They love music. They listen to music all the time in the house, and the way that they would spend their extracurricular money, I guess, is they would go to concerts, and instead of getting a babysitter, most of the time, if they could, they would take me with them.
What kind of music are we talking about?
Everything from country to going to see the symphony to Pat.
You were exposed to all of it.
Pat Benatar, John Mellencamp, like the music they grew up listening to. They didn't get me a guitar until I was 6 years old. I remember they got me like a little toy guitar for Christmas when I was probably 4 or 5, but they got me my first real guitar when I was 6. And part of the deal was I had to take lessons and learn how to play. It couldn't be one of those things that they got it and it would just be a fad, They never pushed it on me, but they encouraged me. They said, if we're gonna get you a guitar, you need to take lessons. Probably a couple months after I was had started taking lessons, I was upstairs practicing one day. I was frustrated because the guitar wasn't a very expensive guitar and it wouldn't stay in tune. And so I marched downstairs and I said, Dad, we've got a problem. He's like, huh?
Dad, we've got a problem.
It's 6.
He's like, what? Yeah, 6 years old. He's like, what's going on? I said, this guitar won't stay in tune. And he kind of just looked at me and was like, huh? And he's like, all right, I'll tell you what. And it was out of tune. He's like, I'll tell you what, I'll get you a better guitar if you continue to practice, keep going to lessons. So that was part of the deal. And I got a better guitar shortly after because I stuck with it.
Do you remember that first guitar, what kind of brand it was or anything like that?
I don't even remember what.
Might have been an old Silver Tone.
Hey, I'm not that old.
No, they got it at a garage sale, Parker.
I wish I remember what it was. I know that it had nylon strings on it. It was not a steel string guitar, and that was probably part of the issue too. Is that nylon strings?
Probably about that much room on between the frets and the board.
Yeah. We still probably got it somewhere back at.
Oh wow!
At
You're gonna need to save that.
Yeah,
it's gonna go in the museum someday.
The museum of not me, but.
Oh yes, you.
No, but no, I stuck with it, and all through the years I had different teachers, and I've learned different styles. I played everything from learning the basics to getting some blues and rock under my fingers, and then kind of transitioned into jazz and learned some more theory stuff. And by the time I was about 11, I got into fingerstyle guitar, which eventually led me to getting a thumb pick, which is how I learned to pick the Chet Atkins and Merle Travis style.
How old are you now, Parker?
I'm just shy of 25 years old. I'm not sure.
How do you even know who Chet Atkins was?
Well, I can accredit that to a guy in my hometown named Adrian Hughes. I was actually in a music store. I had just finished one of my lessons, my jazz theory type lesson, and my mom came and picked me up, and she said, I said, could I get a thumb pick? I asked her if I could get a thumb pick, and she kind of looked at me like, how much is this going to cost? Well, thumb picks are $1.25 or something like that. So anyways, bought one, and the guy behind the counter, I had small hands at the time and fingers and whatnot, and so he shaped it to fit around my thumb. And I picked up a guitar, and I just started playing a little bit of a fingerstyle arrangement of Chet's version of Back Home Again in Indiana. And there was this guy around the corner that heard me, and he pulled out his phone, and he called Adrian Hughes. So he put Adrian on the phone, and he's like, hey, play that again. And so I did, and afterwards I talked to Adrian, and turns out Adrian lived like just a couple miles from our house. He's like, I tell you what, if you're free this coming Monday, why don't you come over, bring your guitar, and we'll just sit and chat and pick a little bit. And so I did, and my dad went with me, and actually I think both my mom and dad went with me to that. We sat there, and Adrian, he was from Eastern Kentucky, coal miners central over there, and he grew up, he was like one of 6 or 7 children, and he grew up in Letcher County, Kentucky. And he talks about growing up, they'd had to fight for the guitar because they only had one guitar in the house and they all played. So he would race home from school to be the first one to play. But he played completely by ear. And he was a huge Merle Travis fan. He was actually a banjo player. But then he learned to play guitar shortly after, but played completely by ear. Big fan of Merle Travis and Chet. And so he was the one who kind of introduced me to that style, showed me how to get my thumb moving on the guitar to get to play kind of similar to Chet Atkins, and just it opened up an entire new world for me, really. And I took that into my own hands. But from that Monday on, for the next about 2 years, I was going over to his house just about every Monday night,
and just picking
and learning from him. Yeah.
So this guy wanted to see you succeed at this.
Yeah, I mean, he was nothing but encouraging, and he gave me some of the best advice I've ever gotten, and it's stuck with me to this day. He's like, no matter what you do with music, it's like, Parker always needs to be Parker. Stay true to yourself. He's like, don't try to be somebody that you're not, and don't try to form into something that's already been done either. He's like, you need to just be yourself, Parker.
Are you old enough yet, Parker, to realize how important that is in this business?
Absolutely.
Everybody wants you to be what they want you to be.
For sure. It's something that I am continuing to learn and continuing to grow into and develop myself. But Adrian, he passed away about 10 years ago. It was in the fall of 2015. So he's been gone 10 years, but that's the legacy I'm trying to carry on and tell people about him and what he did for me and showed me. And I give all my thumb picking credit to him. So
you've had some other mentors, a couple of them that are kind of famous names along the way, I understand.
Sure. One of which has been one of my biggest mentors and friends through the years is Tommy Emmanuel. He's been nothing but generous. He's very encouraging to young people, and he likes to see young people play his stuff and just really carry on the tradition of thumb picking and fingerstyle guitar. I met him for the first time. I was about 11 years old. So it was right around the time, truly though, it was right around the time when I had just got together with Adrian and was learning Chet Atkins music. And Tommy was doing a concert and workshop in Elizabethtown, Kentucky, and my parents for Christmas that year got me a ticket to his workshop. So I sat in there, and there was the room was about full of 60 people. I was the youngest one there. I had my guitar. I was like, obviously for those of you listening, you can't really see, but I was hunched over the guitar.
It was a big guitar for a little kid.
It was a big guitar for a little guy. And I had learned an arrangement of his. It was a song written by another friend of mine, Pat Bergeson. And it was a song that Chet played called The Mountains of Illinois. Which there are no mountains in Illinois. But
Yes.
anyhow, I had learned that, and kind of towards the end of the workshop, Tommy opened it up to the floor. He said, is there anybody that wants to play a song? Nobody raised their hand. And I was sitting kind of midway back, right in the middle. And he kind of pointed me out, and he's like, well, how about you? And, you know, I thought.
You're sinking.
No. I was like, sure. So I jumped up there, and I played the song. It's still out there on YouTube. Somebody had videoed it, and we posted it later on my YouTube page. But, yeah, that kicked it off for me, because from that moment, I think he saw something in me. And he actually met my parents after that workshop, and he asked if we were staying for the show. I didn't know this at the time. He asked if we were staying for the show, and they said yeah, and he said, well, would Parker want to play on stage with me tonight?
Wait. Go back again. How old are you?
Yeah, I don't think I was 12 at this point.
And Tommy Emmanuel takes an interest in you and asks if you want to play a song at his concert.
Yeah, at the show that night.
You're going to pick me up off the floor. You know that.
Well, if this tells you anything, how much that meant to me, my parents waited until we got back in the car to tell me that. We were going to lunch. And they said, hey, Parker, Tommy asked if you'd play in the show with him tonight. And I was 11 years old. I started weeping. I was so excited.
Aww.
I mean, it was...
I'm going to cry just because you even appreciated Tommy Emmanuel and Chet Atkins at that young age.
Well, my mom and dad took me to see Tommy for the first time. I was 8 years old. So he was playing in Frankfort, Kentucky. And they took me to see him, and from then, that was kind of when I got introduced to thumb pick. Now, even before that, I will say kind of the boom chick type style. Before I saw Tommy, they took me to see Brian Setzer. And Brian Setzer was the one who got me wanting a Gretsch guitar, one of those great big orange Gretsch guitars with a Bigsby. Yeah, so I was into that even before I discovered Tommy, but it was around the same time. And I saw Brian Setzer was kind of doing the rockabilly, ding-a-ding-a-ding-a-ding-a-ding, you know, that sort of thing. And I just thought that was so neat. And yeah.
What was it, do you think? I mean, you've mentioned all these names that people are going to recognize, but what was it, do you think, they saw in you that made them take such an interest?
You know, I think I've always kind of been a bright-eyed and bushy-tailed kind of guy, like eager to learn. I think that's the biggest component of it, because even still to this day, I tell people I'm a sponge, because I just absorb everything that I hear and that I see when it comes to music, and you squeeze me, and that's what you hear from me. As I'm kind of a melting pot, I think. I've got some influence from, obviously, the guys like Chet and Merle, and of course Tommy. Now, it's funny too, because a lot of players that come to this Chet Atkins convention, you ask them, they'll say they discovered Merle and Chet. Well, I worked backwards, because I discovered Tommy first, and then that led me to kind of the music of Chet Atkins, Merle Travis, Jerry Reed, and so on and so forth. So,
what is it about that particular style of music that you like so much, that you're drawn to?
It's unique. It tickles the ear a little bit more than, you know, I love country music too, don't get me wrong. I'm a huge Merle Haggard fan, and Buck Owens, and kind of the classic country stuff. Even dipping into more 90s country, you know, we were just talking, I'm a huge fan of Steve Wariner. He's like one of my all-time heroes too.
Of course, he's a picker too. So.
He is. Steve Wariner. Vince Gill is a huge influence. And Brad Paisley,
those guys,
of course.
You know,
all those guys.
Of course, you are mentioning all these guys who are known for their picking.
Yeah, for sure.
So you're drawn to that.
Yeah, it's just a unique style, and you know, you don't have to have a band with you. It's cool because you can just play solo, and a lot of what I do too, I will do solo stuff. I play with a duo, and I've been touring.
Another person who is instrumental, pardon the pun, in making all of this happen is Mark Pritcher.
He told us a lot about the origins of the Chet Atkins Appreciation Society, and about Chet Atkins and others' contributions to the Nashville sound.
And I was in a music store in Knoxville, And I met a guy in there who had just moved from New York State to work for Magnavox, whose headquarters was in Knoxville, their new headquarters. So it turns out that he was a member of the original, much older fan club from the 50s called the Chet Atkins Fan Club. And it was run by a lady in Kentucky. So he was a member of that as a teenager in the 50s.
Wow.
So we got to talking, and he said, you know, I've got this idea to start another entity called the Chet Atkins Appreciation Society, not as a fan club, but as a group of people who know the music and are doing it from that standpoint.
And want to continue the music.
Right. And so the lady who started the original club was still living, and we talked to her, and in 1983, Chet was the Grand Marshal of the Knoxville Dogwood Festival. So Jim had called his office, and it turns out Chet was in the lead car of the parade, and we went to the beginning and stopped the car and talked to Chet before the parade started. And he said, "Oh yeah, y'all do whatever you want to do. You can have the CAAS, and I'm in." So that was in '83. And so by '85, we had the first convention here in Nashville with about 75 people in a small Sheraton downtown. And those people, Jim put an ad in Guitar Player magazine, and there was no other social media. So people saw it in the magazine and started sending in their membership. And the whole thing started again with just a handful of people in a small convention. And then from then on, we had newsletters and all before the internet. Chet, from the 40s on, was a sideman. He played behind dozens and dozens of the stars, and then he became a producer, and he produced 20 to 30 RCA stars at one time, while he was vice president of RCA and while he was touring and doing his own shows. And it was incredible how one person could do all that.
What can you tell us about his style of music?
Well, that's the other part that is hard to comprehend. He played jazz, he played country, he played classical, and he played with all of the stars, George Benson, Earl Klugh, Les Paul, and on and on. And they all just had a ball. They all respected each other, and he could play anything. So that's why this group is so eclectic, because it doesn't matter what style they bring to it, they know that Chet had a little piece of it. So it's not just for people who want to come and thumb pick. It's for people who might have learned about Chet because they listened to George Benson, or they saw with YouTube, they saw how many people that Chet played with who didn't thumb pick, but they all got together and it all worked.
Explain thumb picking for people who don't know.
Since the 1920s, in blues and country music, there have been people who played the bass notes with their thumb and played the melody with their either first finger, or as in classical players, they would use 3 or 4, all their fingers. Mm-hmm. But that started with the blues players in the 20s, and then in the 30s and 40s, Merle Travis came along and played with a thumb and one finger. Chet heard him on the radio, and he thought he was using more fingers. So Chet decided he must be using at least his thumb and 2 fingers, so that's what I'm going to do. And Chet didn't know that he was starting something new because it was from radio.
It was Chet's ignorance is what gave birth to.
Gave birth to wonderful stuff. So between Tommy, who we call the Johnny Appleseed of guitar, the ambassador of guitar,
around the world.
Around the world,
Yeah.
he brought in the whole world with the internet and with his touring. Chet got to see that, but in the years after he passed, it became it just grew and grew and grew.
You think it'll stick around for a long time?
Yeah, I think the kids are, because of the internet and their groupings and talking to each other all the time, the word gets out. You know, in the old days, we had to listen with a record player and pick the needle up and down to learn stuff, and now you can learn the song and the tablature and the music right in front of your eyes, and you play it immediately.
Except,
so,
let's be clear about something.
But you try to play it.
This ain't easy to learn.
No.
This is probably the most difficult guitar playing there is.
And that's why the people who make it here as the Young Thumbs show their talent for however they learned it. The fact is, yes, they learned it. And the ones who are trying have the others to help them. And they can be right here and say, do you know that lick in Tommy's song? And the guy says, of course. Yeah, here's how you do it. And in the old days, that was impossible, you know. So with the Facebook and the groups, there's groups for everybody, and they just learn. It doesn't mean it's easy, but it can be done.
What does it mean to you, and how does it feel to you to keep this all going?
It's great. It's a great feeling, and Jim lived. He's been gone about 10 years, and he saw this happen too, and he was proud as could be. I mean, this is what he intended, and this is. It's been very gratifying to the players and the other folks in Nashville who knew Chet, and they watched it come up also. The people, the stars who knew him have been out here to play in his honor. Charlie McCoy last night is the world's greatest harmonica player, and he's been a sideman since 1960 when Chet hired him. So Charlie's one of the last links to the folks who spent their careers working with Chet. So people like that are very appreciative.
If Chet could walk through the front door of the Sheraton Music City today and see all of this, what do you think his reaction?
He would be very humble. He would say, "What are all you guys doing here? I'm just a guitar picker, you know."
Don't y'all have anything better to do?
Yeah. What are you doing? Let's go play golf. You know, him and Jerry Reed and all those sidemen. That's the way they were always kidding, you know, and said, "We're just a bunch of hillbilly guitar players. What's the big deal?" But they knew how good they were. They put that whole facade on, but they knew exactly what they accomplished, and so did everybody else here. But he was very humble. He would never acknowledge hardly anything on what he really did, but he knew.
Did he change the world of music?
Totally. All of the dozens of his people that he produced, and he knew everybody because he was a player and he was an executive, and he was the leader of the Nashville scene. And so he knew everybody. He knew all the producers. He knew all the people. Sent him cassettes and tapes by the dozen, and so he knew everybody in connections. So he made it happen. So he was the guy.
I had one person say to me that Chet was one of just a very small group, maybe 2 or 3 people, who turned this whole thing in Nashville, for instance, into a business and made it something that could thrive and go on.
Yeah, he was one of the creators of the Nashville sound, and back before Eddie Arnold and into that genre, then it all became changing to a great deal because of him. And so he did a lot for the industry and for Nashville. I mean,
and the world,
Music
really.
City, and the world. And if you listen to it, and it attracted you, then you were in it forever,
You were hooked. Huh?
You were hooked.
One last thought about all of this CAAS stuff. Obviously, we not only had a great time at the event,
Sure did.
we were thoroughly impressed by the people we met there. And I have to say, this is something we would recommend to anyone who loves this kind of music.
Yeah, it's open to the public, but you do have to go online and sign up and get tickets and all that stuff. Just go to the Chet Atkins Appreciation Society website, and you should find information about the upcoming 2026 convention here in Nashville next July. Thanks for joining us for this edition of On the Road with Kelly and Bob. As always, a huge thank you to our sponsor, Mueller Metal Roofs and Buildings, and to our friends at the Odyssey Network.
Don't forget to like us on Facebook and Instagram and follow along behind the scenes on our YouTube channel. On the Road with Kelly and Bob, new episodes drop every week. Listen by downloading that free Odyssey app. Listen anytime, anywhere.